Welcome back to 7th Grade Mustache. On today's episode, we'll be speaking about false chronology. Imagine that you have no timepiece, and you go to the nearest person and you ask them what time it is. They can make up any reasonable hour and minute and tell you that. You carry on, another person comes up to you, and they ask you for the time. You can say, I don't know, or you can keep the same telephone game going. So much of your life is a construct that is maintained by the people that raised you, educated you, and the structures of enforcement that have raised and educated them and the generations before them for a very, very, very long time. Gunnar Heinsohn was a German professor of sociology and economics at the University of Bremen in Bremen, Germany. He died in 2023. He spent much of his career looking closely at history and civilizations. He claims 700 years of history is missing from the archaeological and religious records. The time between the 3rd century and 536 AD, and then up to the 10th century, there are strange inconsistencies in that span of time. The archaeological record suggests the Western Roman Empire in the 3rd century, the Eastern Romans or the Byzantine Empire in the 7th century, and the empires of northern Central Europe all happen in parallel and not sequentially. He suggests one massive ecological disaster disrupted global civilization. This suggests that the first 1,000 years AD actually happened in a span of 300 years. Gunnar Heinsohn suggests those missing 700 years were backfilled by the Catholic Church and the Abbasid Muslim Caliphate. These ideas have been examined before Gunnar Heinsohn. The great chess player Garry Kasparov often spoke of Anatoly Fomenko and his phantom time concept. Fomenko surmised that European world history before 1600 AD was falsified to suit the narratives created by the Vatican and the Jesuits and the Russian House of Romanov. They were working together to hide the machinations of a group called the Russian Horde. The Russian Horde controlled that area before the 1600s, when Ivan the Terrible became the first Tsar of Russia. The Russian Horde is made up of Scythians, Huns, and Goths. Oh yes, and of course, the Khazarians. They like to hide in plain sight. That's real interesting, but tampering with narratives and timelines goes all the way back to the Byzantine Empire and a guy named Constantine. The first Council of Nicaea was in 325 AD. Does anybody know what happened at the first Council of Nicaea? They edited the books that would become the Bible. That would determine the course of Western civilization for the next 1,700 years.
He tried to kill Arius, the guy that ran the Arians, not the Aryan nation. He was a black priest that was like, hey, this shit ain't making no sense.
Arius challenged the idea that God the Son and God the Creator, are these one and the same? What are you trying to communicate here? Because there was confusion about what that was. Because these people were actually editing these documents that they didn't really understand themselves, but they were manufacturing a narrative that they wanted to put forward.
Just for the record, people do realize Constantine was baptized on his deathbed. He gave us Christianity. He forced it on all these people, but then he partied and drank all that. Then when he's about to die, they're like, hey, I don't think I'm going to make it. why don't you christen me real quick just so I can make it to the gates of heaven if this heaven thing is real? There's so many contradictions. Now, hold it. What you just said is that they stretched 300 years of history into 1,000 years. And instead of things that happen simultaneously. Well, you said roughly 900 to 1,000. I know what you're saying, but my point being is this. So you change the order of events, and which possibly covers up a lot of history. And another thing is we were brainwashed early on in life to think polytheism was inferior to monotheism. So all those old religions were erased on purpose. Oh, you worship different things, or I'm so glad that they saved me from worshiping trees and shit. So literally we're saying that these events didn't happen the way they said they did. And what they did was they manufactured history to make it seem like that they have a civilization, that their civilization nowhere near as long as ours. And they found other civilizations that existed prior to this.
The Second Council of Nicaea was in 787 AD. Both councils were significant in the history of the Byzantine Empire. What people need to understand is that the Byzantine Empire is simply a continuation of the Roman Empire, but in Constantinople. But yet you hardly hear about the Byzantine Empire unless certain key events come up, which is by design. Back to Gunnar Heinsohn. One part of his chronological dispute is the lack of new architecture. There were no new churches built by the Christians in the first 3 centuries after the death and resurrection of Jesus Christ. The first church appears later in the 4th century AD, the time of the First Council of Nicaea. So now you have all these people who are gathered in Constantinople, this great city that is built by the later Roman Empire, and now they have amassed all this wealth from all these spoils of war and taking shit all around the old world, and they start building these churches. So Gunnar Heinsohn actually argued that Constantine lived in the 1st century AD and not 300 AD. The lack of records makes it very difficult to connect these missing fragments in the historical record.
Okay, so I just saw this video where this chick was arguing about Ethiopia being the oldest Christian nation on earth. Her argument was, this Christianity thing is not African. It's not African. And she talks about, there's a white man that brought the Ethiopians their Bible, and she recites the Greek man that brought them the Bible. Now, back in the day, the Greeks were black, but that's another story. But I'm sitting here, and when she's reciting her documentation, and I'm like, well, what about the Kebra Nagast? What about the Book of Kings? That wasn't brought by. So this.
Did you interact with this person and mention these things, or are you just saying this to yourself?
No, this is a video. I'm saying this to myself because it's a video, but my point being, this coincides with what you're talking about, with false timelines. And I think the Jews learned how to manipulate media a long time ago. When you talk about the Khazars, I'm not talking about Hebrews. I'm talking. They knew. They read the books. They wrote stuff down, and they realized if you write stuff down, this goes back to what you were saying about the jinns, going back and forth in time and things like that. If you write stuff down and disseminate it to enough people, it becomes fact. Truth doesn't matter. It's the fact that who can recite it. This is indoctrination. And me and you talked about this off the air, where I was like, black folks understand how easy it is for somebody to erase your history by putting their history or their spin on it in a book. Then you're being educated by your oppressor. Of course, you're going to be like, okay, Jesus is white. Okay, thou shalt not kill. Slave should be this. Or slave should. But then when you look at these old translations of the Bible, a lot of the stuff that we recite now weren't even in that version of the Bible. So it's very easy for history to be manipulated when you run the books. Just like Robert Maxwell, he owned McGraw, and he owned textbook companies. Why would you own a textbook company? There ain't a lot of money in that, right? Schools get a new textbook every 3 or 4 years. No, that's so you can control the information and control the timeline. And this right here, what you're talking about, is so profound. There's so many instances where you catch it, and after what you just said, there's so many instances of stuff that you look at, you're like, that was a chance for somebody to slip something in the timeline. That's a chance for somebody to erase that timeline. You find these buildings and stuff. Here's another argument. People love to say Africa is the birthplace of civilization. Africa is the birthplace of humans. There's one problem. There's two things off the bat. One, humans usually begin around fresh water. The oldest fresh water in the world is found over here in North America. The North American continent is allegedly older than the African continent. They have a freshwater spring in New York/Canada that's 36 million years old. So there's a chance that life began over here. But
the Appalachian mountain range is actually the oldest mountain range in North America, and it connects to the Adirondack Mountains in upstate New York in the Hudson Valley. All of that right there is one long backbone of mountains that is as old as the planet.
How about this? How about another proof that America may be the old world and we were lied to? There are 29 plants described in the Bible. None of them are found in the Middle East, but 28 of those plants are found in Florida and the Southeast. 29 of these plants that are described. And I'm like, well, that's kind of curious. But if I go to where allegedly the Bible happened, and again, we're talking about thousands of years, maybe they died out or something. But I know when you look it up, 28 of the plants, 29 of the plants that are described in the Bible, 28 are found in Florida alone. That's kind of weird, don't you think? So I'm just pointing to evidence that this may be the old world over here. That's all. And we keep finding pyramids, and we know for a fact they destroyed those different mounds and different pyramids that were found over here. Somebody else was talking about there are pyramids that are 50 miles outside of Louisiana in the Gulf Coast, an area that had been exposed at once. So there are things to support, and we all know the Grand Canyon. This is another thing when you talk about should I say destroyed timelines or altered timelines? What do you suggest, Roscoe? Altered timelines?
Altered timelines.
So they say that there's certain parts of the Grand Canyon you can't go into, but who has the rights to it? NASA. Now, why the fuck does a space organization have the rights to the Grand Canyon?
Because what you have to understand about that organization is that they maintain certain occult rituals because they practice Mithraism, which goes back to this time that we're speaking about during the Roman Empire.
But they also have, don't forget, they also have the rights to the inside of the Sphinx. So these are two separate things all the way across the world, and this organization, NASA, has the rights to them. That's because they keep saying the Grand Canyon is just like the Sphinx pyramids in Giza. They run that shit down to us. Go ahead, my brother. What you got?
The Library of Alexandria in Egypt was burned down. It was burned down by the Romans. Once the Romans knew the Egyptians possessed documents relating to civilizations before Egypt, it makes sense to destroy such an archive if you plan to control the world memory of ancient times. In Rome, a great archive of scrolls and pertinent historical information was burned during the reign of Marcus Aurelius. When you want to hide evidence of the past, you erase it from the minds of the masses. That is another form of social engineering.
Yes.
For example, why is the Greek Antikythera astronomical device considered an out-of-place artifact in history? Because it was found in a sunken ship. It's as if it was being taken away from Greece to safeguard it from people who would want to keep that technology for themselves. Yet, there were no such technology because all documents of it were destroyed. Take a look at Constantinople, Byzantium. It was considered the second most important city after Rome. Well, this is because those people were Romans. And of course, you're going to pump yourself up and say you're the best. America's the number one. We're the best. America, fuck yeah. Coming to save the motherfucking day, yeah. Yet, for 200 years, there were no new buildings constructed. They had the wealth and the knowledge to construct new churches and government buildings, but they did not. Then, in the 6th century Constantinople, there is new construction that is identical to the buildings of 1st century Rome. Jump forward to the early Middle Ages in 930 AD. The buildings are the exact same type as those in Rome from the 3rd century. You got to understand something. Architectural styles and techniques are almost impossible to duplicate. Keep them the exact same for 700 years. It doesn't make any sense at all. But when you examine another location, the architecture of Jerusalem, you see the same gaps in construction. There were no temples built from the 1st to the 3rd centuries, despite the massive wealth and resources of people in that area. Then jump forward all the way to the early Middle Ages, when the Knights Templar and other crusaders built structures in Jerusalem. Jerusalem has no new buildings constructed from 230 AD until the 1100s, when the Crusades happened.
All they did was build on top of the past civilizations, or they inherited it. Even when you look at the people that inhabit Egypt right now, they even say that we took there's white marble on the pyramids. They took that off and made temples and made other stuff with them. That's not somebody who they acquired what was there. They didn't build shit. But they had the same practice in North America. When they found pyramids and stuff in North America, they tore them down. When they found mounds, they tore them down. That's because those were past civilizations. And also, you didn't want to say that those Native Americans that were here built those, or, oh my God, even when you deal with it in South America. So if all these pyramids, all these things show that there was a past civilization there, or even the fact that the water table may have been different from flooding or whatever, you don't want to admit that they say they left like a hard drive, so their children, their ancestors wouldn't have to start over. Man, if you snatch up them hard drives across the planet, and I'm just giving an example of documentation, books, the Library of Alexandria. If you destroy all that, if you destroy all that information, then you're starting from scratch, and then you can force feed the people whatever you want them to have, whether it's religion, and then you can control them. And then I guess old girl was talking to somebody else, and she was breaking that shit down. How if you destroy this, and if you had people that were one with nature, damn near gods individually, and we had a collective, how would you destroy that? You would destroy the past, cut the ties with the past, make people think they need medicine, create one world religion. I mean, even essentially when you deal with Christianity, Judaism, and Islam, they're still essentially they're the same religion, just from a different point of view.
Okay,
but
what you have in that scenario you described is a temporal overlay, meaning history repeating itself in the form of now you have people who are back to the land, raising their own chickens, homesteaders, versus the people who are into transcendence and who want to put chips in their bodies and body modification and live forever and go to another planet and technocracy. And that's, controlled by an oligarchy and all of this profession, oppression and controlling every aspect of your life. That right there, what I just presented to you is a temporal overlay. That struggle happened 1,000 years before that, because
2,000 years before
the Roman Empire, which then became Byzantium, which then became the Jesuits and the Catholic Church, want to control narratives, want to control people, want to control commerce, want to control trade and export and all of these things. And it's a temporal overlay. It's like history is repeating itself. People who are deep into temporal studies often say that we're actually living all these times at the same time. It's just we're separated by different experiences or different birth rates.
Yeah.
In this plane.
Hold on, you're getting so.
I told you, motherfucker. We getting in the shark. We going down deep into the trench. Get in the shark, motherfucker.
Oh boy, just talked about this.
I'm not talking about the amphibious creature. I'm talking about the amphibious vehicle. Go ahead.
I know what you meant.
That's a G.I. Joe reference.
Hey, don't forget the shark was an airplane too, nigga. You can go high or you can go deep.
All right.
In the shark. It'll fly us up, my nigga. What I was gonna say is, old boy was just talking about this shit. He said if you pay attention to the fossil record, if you pay attention when agriculture happened, people actually got shorter, smaller brain capacity. So somebody realized if you control the diet long time, yes, if you control the food, which controls the diet.
Who's that sound like? Monsanto?
That sounds like Monsanto. That sounds like the Catholic Church. That sounds like
after World War II, when all those food companies got together and decided that we need to control this food and
they've done it before
make factory food.
Hold it. They've done it before in the timeline. And old boy broke down some other shit. Like, because they used Dr. Sebi. Dr. Sebi said this. He said, you got to be careful about eating cow. We thought he was saying don't eat meat at all, which he did. But he said the cow is a hybrid. The cow is a hybrid of an aurochs. With the aurochs was from the Greeks and the Romans. So literally, like, God damn, wait a minute. That means that this is not a natural animal, just like he tried to break it down to us that we're not eating natural food. And when he said it, I'm like, but that grows off the ground. No, broccoli, cauliflower. There's 4 other things that come from some plant from the Mediterranean, and that's when you realize the Catholic Church was controlling the people's diet, and they were controlling their
And the
access.
French Revolution was
Yeah, come
controlled
on.
by the Masons, who stopped the import and movement of grain in France and starved the people so that they will revolt against the monarchy.
Well, on top of that, we're not even today. We're not even eating the natural grain. The grain we eat now is 14
It's
times.
what? Listen, the Franken food that everybody gets in the form of bread, that wheat has been modified so much
Bleached,
it
that's
causes
right, yes.
people to become glucose.
Cancer.
No, mm-mm. It causes them to be glutamine intolerant. All right, so they can't digest that type of wheat because it's been modified. But if you go to Europe, into Italy, where they don't have the GMO wheat, you eat the pasta over there and you don't feel tired. You don't feel sleepy.
How about this? Like, even we talk about Ezekiel bread. Now, Ezekiel bread comes from the book of the Bible, Ezekiel, but it has that recipe, and they use. I always feel, is it split or spelt? But it uses that spelt. Excuse me. It uses that grain from back then. All these grains today come from spelt. But here's the problem: that grain back then had 23 grams of protein in it. So you didn't have to eat no chicken. You could just ate that grain, because you got to remember, the cows and the chickens and the animals that we eat get their protein from that grain. So if we were eating the natural grain the way we were supposed to, we'd be different people. We completely bigger, smarter. See, what they try to tell you is, hey, well, when the dinosaurs was alive, it was more oxygen in the air. The oxygen. They give you some bullshit, like, okay, that kind of makes sense. But what about the fact that we were bigger and stronger? And now if you control what I eat, then it's even harder for you to rebel against me for three basic reasons. You're not physically strong, you're not mentally strong, and you don't have the spiritual, you're not connected to each other the way we were. So if they can do that to you, then all of a sudden we are no longer threats. And then on top of that, you fuck with us when it comes to entertainment and education. You lower the education, you make us indoctrinated, and then you give us entertainment to drain us and fuck our kids over. And now we're scared to let our kids outside, and they got to have a cell phone everywhere they go. There are all this shit that we're arguing about with China. We don't want a social whatever. They're trying to give you a fucking national ID right now. So yeah, they're erasing everything and making you dependent on them. And this is some, god damn. Do you know how hard it is when you sit there and say, if you overlap time the way that people, oh god, you getting deep, Roscoe. God damn, motherfucker.
There are plenty of historical records that document the huge numbers of Jews and Muslims that were killed fighting the Crusaders when they invaded Jerusalem. Now, if no new buildings were built until 230 AD, and then there was no building built between that point all the way until the 900s, especially in Jerusalem, there was no new buildings built until the Crusaders got there.
Do you want proof of this?
Hold on. Wait. Let me finish my point. If there were no new buildings built in Jerusalem until the Crusaders built them, then where did all of the peoples live that were killed fighting the Crusaders? Where did these people live at? Because you got to get them from somewhere.
How about this? So the idea of a castle, your classic view of a castle, like the moat and the turrets at the top, where does that come from? It doesn't come from Europe. It comes from North Africa. And here's the crazy part. So that architecture comes from North Africa. We ain't even
got to Africa, man.
Yeah, hold it. No. I'm talking about the no new buildings part. Slow down. I'm talking about what you were just saying. There's no new buildings. How about the fact that when you see these churches, they literally tell you when they were Moorish, when they were Muslim, when they were Christian. These churches, they have a documented history of who owned them and who literally built them. And if you're saying there's no new buildings, for instance, we can get deep and say that those churches were already there and they just acquired them, or they were built under when the Moors was running the 800 years when the Moors were running Iberian Peninsula. So if you want to say that, they were built in, but it tells you that those churches, is more now, is Christian now, is Muslim now. They have that documentation. So this either way, this agrees with what you're saying. Ain't no new buildings. And you're asking where those Muslims and those Christians lived during the Crusades? They lived in those buildings. And so once they took over, somebody just acquired the building and just put another title on it. And they literally had the documentation of who. Hey, at this point, it was this. At this point, for this 200 years, it was that. For this 600 years, it was that. They got the documentation. So that means this, like you said, there's no new buildings. These people didn't build more. So it'd be, oh god damn, this is a brain fuck. So what you're saying is all this time happened, all these events happened at the same time. They didn't happen in chronological order. It wasn't this, and this. It wasn't how about this?
It's a massive cover up. That's what I'm talking about.
When we were in high school, we learned Europeans look at time as linear. Africans look at time as significant events. Like for instance, the example old boy gave me, he was a white guy. He was Polish. He said, when you talk to your grandmother, Cecil, when did Jamal die? Oh, Thursday? Oh yeah, that shit happened yesterday. That you tell time by significant events, by deaths.
No, because that's the time when the cane fields caught on fire and all the hogs run away and the frogs would not stop singing that night.
So, but that's how we tell time. But these other people tell time differently. They tell it linear, and they tell you by events. But if you look back, though, we don't know if those events were real, but they documented those events in books. And like I said, when you said some deep shit about the jinn, like you said, hey, you got to memorize your Bible because the jinn can go back and forth the time and change it. And I'm like, that was some Mandela effect shit when you talked about that. So, is it the Mandela effect? It's happened multiple times. We're just calling this a Mandela effect, but clearly there was a Mandela effect 300 years ago. And we were convinced that it's 700 years when it's only 300. That's some, God, fucking. And so when they come over here to America, so another example. Oh, so I remember when we were talking about Lewis and Clark, and they had a slave named York, but they called that slave their guide, and they called that slave their scout. And I'm like, well, how can an enslaved African be your guide for the Louisiana Purchase when he's supposed to be from Africa or been on the East Coast? That's because he was native to the area. And so that's how they are good and proficient at erasing history. Another thing that they erased was...
what they also don't tell you is they brought him along from muscle.
But here's the crazy part.
Because they needed, you know what I'm saying, they need a fucking bodyguard because them fucking frail motherfuckers couldn't do nothing.
How about this? We're from Nebraska. There's a place called York, Nebraska. Wasn't York, Nebraska named after this nigga? But again, we don't even know.
That.
Yes, we don't know who our heroes are and who did what significant. But the other part was, you got to remember, I don't know which one committed suicide. Who they said he was suicided. Lewis and Clark. One of them, he was given instructions by. He was given instructions by Thomas Jefferson. Hey, he's like, while you looking at the Louisiana Purchase, look for Dutch settlements because allegedly the Dutch was over here. He finds them. He starts talking about it. So this nigga committed suicide. He shot himself in the stomach, then shot himself in the head. How do you commit suicide by shooting yourself in two places? Yeah. What happened was when he started spreading that shit about the Dutch, that means the Dutch would have had rights to this property before the English, and they didn't want that shit. And France just sold us this land that belonged to somebody else. That's like somebody selling you a used car, but then you get the title like, wait a minute, who is this? Oh, no, never mind that. It's yours. So, again, this whole idea of time, how about this? What gave people the confidence to do this shit is that it's been done before. Again, another thing that we talked about in past podcasts, how many people call Harriet Tubman a conductor on the Underground Railroad? And me and you had talked about, a lot of old black folks talk about the Underground Railroad like it's a real railroad. What if there was already a railroad and railroad tracks underground, and she literally discovered that shit? That's how she got our people all the way to Canada, because she was a conductor on the Underground, a physical Underground Railroad. And what about these buildings that were connected to the Underground Railroad that they demolished because, oh, well, you know, we put a plaque up? No, they demolished those buildings because, again, they showed past civilizations, and they showed that they had an ability to connect each other all across the East Coast. So trust me, there's proof of other civilizations that existed a lot longer ago that were already over here in America. So if you're calling America the New World, you had to destroy whatever they found over here. Like we know they destroyed the people, but they also had to destroy the buildings, or they had to build the buildings on top of other buildings. And you see that shit. Whatever these people.
The architectural styles of the 2nd century show up in Germany and Hungary 700 years after those styles were in everyday usage. For people that don't know much about architecture, that doesn't sound like a big deal. But you have to realize that with wars, the passage of time, and much more, that information is not passed on directly for 700 years. It falls out of practice. Those skills aren't being used, so they fade. Small details, such as painted glass from 2nd century Hungary, appear in 9th century Germany. It's as if construction, art, and fundamental knowledge was plucked from the 2nd century and placed in the 9th century. Unless that passage of time was added by people that want to control a chronological and historical narrative. So what this winds up creating is out-of-place artifacts in 4 to 5 countries. And it's stuff that doesn't make sense because it doesn't add up. There's no logical progression. In the 8th century southern Italy, there is a Langobard church that is constructed in the exact same techniques used in the 2nd century Roman architecture. Again, out-of-place artifacts. One of the strangest details about all this architecture is that it stands on nothing older than itself. The civilizations of the Romans, Jews, and Muslims always build a temple or church or synagogue on a site that was previously occupied by ancient structures centuries before.
We've seen it. We've seen those monoliths at 200 tons underneath the Parthenon, or that there was a temple dedicated to somebody. But you see the bricks underneath it are huge, like literally 200 tons. And I'm like, well, what did they build that on top of?
Okay, so all of these structures that I mentioned were the first structures and the only structures built on those sites. That is very odd, and that is out of the style and ideology of these civilizations that build their structures of significance on previous civilizations.
How about in the Bible where it talks about the son of Noah going to these cities that already existed?
That is the part right there that they just try to skip over right away. And they're talking about his sons took daughters with people from like just already on the outside of the boat. And I'm like, who are these people? Okay, so clearly there's holes in the logic of this story.
Well, not only that, slow down. What about if those cities existed? Again, my argument is maybe America is the old world. What if those cities were these cities that were destroyed by these folks, these Europeans that came over? What if they had whole cities? And we talked about that shit when we talked about the World's Fair. The World's Fair was nothing but a cover up to destroy these cities. When I sent you that thing from the the book I sent you that shows there was a
the Great Exposition, the Omaha that happened in Omaha.
Yeah, the exposition of it was like the Midwest Exposition, happened in 18 or whatever. It was like the World's Fair, and when you see, you couldn't have built this in no 5 years because every 4 years they pick the World's Fair. You could have built this, and when you see the pool and the lake and how huge it was, and the marble and all this stuff. How about this? Every time they talk about there's 2 or 3 things they talk about in North America that destroyed the old world.
Hold on. What? The Trans-Mississippi Exposition was a World's Fair held in Omaha, Nebraska from June the 1st to November the 1st of 1898. Yes. Its goal was to showcase the development of the entire West, stretching from the Mississippi to the Pacific coast. The Indian Congress was held at the same time in Omaha, Nebraska. Over 2.6 million people came to Omaha to view the 4,062 exhibits during the 5 months of the exposition. President William McKinley and William Jennings Bryan were among the dignitaries who attended at the invitation of Gordon Wattles. the event's leader. 100,000 people assembled on the plaza in Omaha to hear him speak. The expo stretched over a 180-acre tract in North Omaha and featured a 2,000-foot classical building. Oh my God, dude. These buildings were in the hood. No, dog, they're in the hood. Hold on a second, man. All of this Tartarian shit is in the hood underneath our houses in Omaha.
Oh, okay, so there's two things they use to erase. Three things. I'm lying. There's three things they use to erase the old world. First things first is these expositions and the World Fairs. When they were done with the World's Fair, they would destroy these buildings that clearly these buildings took forever to make. I'm gonna give you an example. The train station, Central Station in Omaha. When you go in that building, it's Art Deco. That building looks like it can't be destroyed. This building is up in the air. It's on stilts. It looks like the Justice League.
Is it over there by the Union Pacific offices?
Yeah. Well, no, it's by where I work, but it's a museum now. And when you go over 10th Street, you go over that viaduct, and to the left you see this marble building. That's what I'm talking about. It's kind of pink, and like, God damn, that's some solid looking shit.
There is architecture in downtown Omaha that
makes no sense.
that always got my attention. And it's some weird Gotham City looking shit, dude. And it has been there for a long time. Funny ass thing about people is when they come to Omaha from out of town, first of all, you don't give jewels to mules. So if they don't have the eyes to see it, they won't think anything is there. But I tell people all the time, I said, all of the interesting stuff in Omaha is not out west. It's downtown. It's around the north side.
By the river.
By the
north
river.
Side, by the east side.
That's where all the life is in the city. And also, that's where most of the trees are, too.
Hold on, let me finish my point. I said there's three ways they destroyed the old world when it came to America. One were these world fairs and expositions, because when they were done, they destroyed them. Two, all these major cities had what? These fires, like the Chicago fire. They said it was started by old girl's cow. How the fuck would you know that? But that's my point when you control the media. And last but not least, how many of these motherfuckers, when they came over here, they even talk about destroying the pyramids and the mounds and using those building materials to make other stuff. So those are the three things they do to destroy. When you came over here, you had whole cities that already existed. And even the white folks now are telling you, hey, the Native Americans built that. Now, again, there was so much knowledge. There's things that people knew about North America that was just amazing. One, they called it Tartaria, or the Tortuga. They called it Turtle Island. How did you know this shit was shaped like a turtle? Or even like the Chappaquiddics, the people up there in Maine or whatever. Them black folks, them Native Americans. When you look them people up, they look like light-skinned black folk.
On 19th and Dodge, there is the Mary Magdalene Cathedral. And it is a really strange building because today when you drive by it, it's on a hill slightly, so it kind of slants down. But it's on a hill. When you see the construction of it, it looks like it's on stilts because it's weird because there's an entire floor. They built the basement. Basically what they did is they built the basement, and then they built everything on top of it going up, right? All the successive floors. And then they buried the basement. It's weird. Like the basement is buried, but they wanted to make sure that it had a sound. This building could probably withstand a nuclear blast. Yep. So anyway, just a little interesting fact about the buildings that are in downtown Omaha. Very, very strange construction.
Ours is called Union Station. I said Grand Central. It's Union Station. When you look at Union Station, look at the construction. Then, like you said, it's up on stilts. It's up, but they brought the road to it. But when you look at Union Station, tell me that shit wasn't plucked out of time.
It's weird because when you look at the Mary Magdalene Cathedral, when you look at Union Station, it looks like it's up on stilts. And then there was like the ground level. It was built on the ground level. And then they just built all the dirt and then brought the road up to it. It's strange.
I'm sorry. I'm trying to look at the station. That's the exact same. It's like they built the road to it. And like, why would you do that? And this building looks like it can't be destroyed. Or maybe it has some other spiritual or some geological shit. They literally say that the pyramids are like on the axis. They control the spin of the earth. What if this shit was like they had to keep this shit there for other reasons, and we just don't know. Like when it comes to energy or something like that, like, oh, we can't destroy this building, it'll fuck around and destroy the whole city or some shit. Or if this building goes down, the river will change course. What if there's some shit like that we just don't know about?
So it's really weird. Like when you look at the bottoms or the foundations of these buildings. Like I said, with these ones that are missing these 700 years, there's nothing underneath them. So again, in southern Italy, there's that one that Langobar Church, and it's built with 2nd century Roman architecture. Really, really, really strange stuff. Building in 9th century Bulgaria has a 2nd century Roman construction style down to the roof tiles. This is really strange. Apparently, the materials were brought from Rome. Now, that is a monumental task. But it's weird when they consider that 700-year-old roof tiles would crumble, and the roof would leak, and water would destroy it over time. But yet, they brought all these materials from Rome, including the roof tiles. From the 2nd century to the 9th century, there was no new construction in Europe or Jerusalem.
Hey, I got one for you, Roscoe. When you look up Union Station in Omaha, it says it opened in 1931. When you look, it doesn't say it was built in 1931. It doesn't say it was built in 1931. It says it was opened in 1931. That's the weirdest shit. And I've seen that shit on other of these classic buildings. Like whenever we do our research on them, like we and you'll talk about stuff, it says founded in 1890. I'm like, what do you mean founded? So when you see these words, pay attention to these words. When they say it was opened, didn't say it was built. It says it was opened. Doesn't that kind of sound like some shit that was already there, and then we just, we altered some things, we put some train tracks in front of it? That doesn't sound like somebody who built the building. That sounds like somebody who found a building that was already there, and they changed the use of it. That's all I'm saying. But it's just, when they say a building is founded or a building opened, they don't say built. That's just some weird shit. That's all I'm saying.
It is some weird shit. So one thing you have to take into consideration here is we've been talking about archaeology and religion and construction styles. But in 536 AD, at least 2 volcanoes around the world erupted. It created a volcanic winter that caused the northern hemisphere of the planet to cool down. That volcanic winter caused a massive crop die-off and many people starved. Now, they're trying to say that this is what started the Dark Ages. But if you take the timeline that we're talking about and you remove these sections that were just filler that were put in by the Roman Catholics and the Jesuits, then you have this one blip on the radar in the middle of that, where this causes this quiet period of no development. Now, that's one argument that people can use, but you can actually tie it into something else.
Come on. I got one for you.
Go ahead.
Come on. How many times? So in Mexico, they found those figurines that don't make sense. It's a nigga riding a
spaceship.
Well,
it's a spaceship.
No. Hey, what's the dinosaur with the horns? Triceratops. There's a nigga riding a Triceratops. There is a figurine. They got a bunch of them. How come you keep seeing on these classic buildings, you keep seeing dinosaurs interacting with people? What about that? So clearly that means the timeline, because we're told dinosaurs are 35 million years ago. But you keep finding examples of dinosaurs interacting with people, or woolly mammoths in South America that it shows those people down there hunting woolly mammoths. So when the pyramids were allegedly built 10,000 years ago, which again people tell us they're 50,000 years old, but whatever, they're saying that that saber-toothed tigers and woolly mammoths existed then. So that's clear indication that what we're taught in grade school as a little kid, that T-Rex, but then you read the Bible, and the Bible talks about dragons. So when you sit there and say, okay, the word dragon existed before the word dinosaur, clearly there was some big ass reptiles that existed that flew around and did crazy shit. So if what we're saying is the Bible talks about dragons, clearly those were dinosaurs. Clearly people interacted with dinosaurs recently, but I'm just giving an example of how people can lie about a timeline, and then what they do is indoctrinate you when you're in grade school. That they give you a bunch of books with a Triceratops fighting a T-Rex, and that happened 135 million years ago, and they tell you that. But the problem with that, how come they find dinosaur bones, but then they find buildings at the same depth and shit like that? So that right there, if this shit is 145 million years, this shit should be like 2,000 feet deep, right? Cuz no. The timelines are fucked up on purpose because they don't. There was a time when we were bigger, we interacted with nature, and we were probably damn near gods. And they don't want you to, they don't want you to return to that. So they tell you the timeline is, no, dinosaurs died out. That shit happened a long time ago. But you got African tribes that tell you about dinosaurs, about a damn big ass dinosaur in the Congo. They tell you about them, like, hey, we see them. And so the white folks, well, that's historical knowledge that they pass down from generation to generation. They haven't seen that creature. How the fuck do you know? Because if this was the truth, this would destroy your credibility because you've been lying to us the whole time. Anytime you find some shit that will destroy your credibility, look, me and you talk about this shit and get off the air. I'm like, how come it's so easy for people to believe in Satan, but it ain't easy for them to believe in God? And I don't like the word believe, so I'm like, how about this? If you find proof of evil, then that's proof of God. When you sit here and somebody has demonic possession or some shit like that happens, and it broke my faith, it's just the opposite for me. When I see that, then I'm like, well, shit, I know God existed because he's the one who taught me or gave us this. We know that there's Christ consciousness, which Roscoe always talks about. So these things should show you proof that the people that are oppressing. How about this? They talk about transcendentness and all this bullshit that you need technology. If you sit here and do what you know, if we eat lion's mane mushrooms, if you cold plunge, if you fast, you will transcend. You will be a better human being. You'll be a superhuman being. You know what I'm saying? They talk about when a woman's pregnant, if she eats eggs, I forgot what the chemical is, but it makes the kid smarter. We know what it takes to make us smarter and stronger. It's not the shit they're giving us. It's not Cheetos, my nigga. It's not Doritos, my nigga. It's not that bullshit. But if we eat the way we're supposed to and worship the way we're supposed to and make love to the way we're supposed to, like, yeah, them motherfuckers will fall off the planet. And money don't matter, and they can't stop you. We seen niggas get shot a bunch of times, go to war. They just keep coming. So, and what about that nigga over there in Mexico or South America? They cut his hands off. They put 2 blades on his hands, and he still fought the Spanish. Killed like 1,200 Spanish by himself. This nigga like, fuck it. I can't wipe my ass, but give me some blades, and I'm gonna fight these niggas. That's what. That timeline has been corrupted, and we don't realize that shit probably happened a couple weeks ago. You feel me? So, I'm sorry, Roscoe.
In school, you're taught in a manner that reinforces a power structure, constantly suppressing the true origin and capabilities of mankind's potential. The entertainment you consume is meant to reinforce the doctrines of the educational system. The food that you eat is engineered to kill you slowly and make you reliant on Western allopathic medicine. The science that currently rules this reality was created by a British Freemason group called the British Royal Society. On the surface, they promote reason and logic. Behind closed doors, they practice magic rituals. They're part of pagan sex death cults and mind control. It forms the foundation of their belief. Therefore, what you get is an alternate history that exists directly below the sanitized version that is fed to school children and the news media.
They convince you that magic and this shit is bullshit, and that this sterilized version of events is how it happens, and that a pill is better than anything nature can give you. But Whenever whenever you have to argue with somebody about that, arguing is not the right word. Whenever you discuss this with somebody, and they're like, "Well, a pill is better," I'm like, "Why is a pill better? A pill has side effects. How come when you pick this aspirin up or you pick this plant up and you take it, it cures you with no side effects, but then when the white man gets hold of it, he adds side effects because the side effects makes you a customer. So yeah, I treated your illness. I didn't cure your illness. I treated your illness." But now I've given you another illness of anxiety. Now you got to take anxiety medicine. Now I'm giving you something else. And it's also encouraged by the diet that you're consuming makes it worse. It exacerbates it. So yeah, this shit is meant to make you unhealthy. Your customer. Look, do you know why it's so hard to talk about cancer? Because we've all lost relatives to cancer. And if I got to sit here and tell people that there's a cure for cancer, they want to call me stupid and crazy because they lost their grandmother, their auntie, their uncle, their grandfather, their brother, sister, their child to cancer. But I'm like, look, when people, I sit and tell people, hey, I had skin cancer. I'm a nigga. We ain't supposed to get no skin cancer. I had skin cancer. And when they asked me, what did you do? I went to the doctor when they told me I had skin cancer. Because the first things first, a biopsy makes it worse. So you sit here and see you have cancer, or you see the lump, or they find the lump, and you see that you have cancer. So why do I need a diagnosis, my nigga? So they cut the shit off, send it to K-State. They're like, yeah, you have cancer. Well, we want you to come back on this day. I never went back to that bitch. I went and got me some apricot pits and ate the motherfuckers. They taste terrible. But I crunched on the motherfuckers for about a month and a half, then I went on about my business. Because I wasn't about to let the same person that gave me the shit try to cure me of the shit. You understand what I'm saying? So, I'm sorry. I got hyped. Look, what I'm saying is that they corrupted the timeline to control you. They corrupt your diet and what they consider health to control you. They do this shit, and then you're stuck fighting this shit, and not fighting them. You're stuck arguing with your kids and shit, but you're not fighting the oppressor. You're not raising your kids to be warriors anymore. If your kid fights in school right now, they'll fuck around and suspend that little nigga or that little girl for whatever reason. It doesn't matter who hit them. Doesn't matter if 4 kids jumped them. They want you to curl up in a ball. They don't want warriors. They don't want you to be who you're supposed to be. That's why they disguise who was already here or who the real warriors were, because if you knew, then you wouldn't accept this bullshit that you're being given right now. If you knew that building was probably your family building or your people built that building, instead they're telling you it's a train station, or they're telling you have connection to the land, but you probably also got connection to these buildings too, and not realizing that your people built that shit years ago. And I don't mean no slave shit, my nigga. I'm not talking about slave. I'm talking about that this land and those cities belong to your people already. Excuse me.
The hunter-gatherer origin of humanity was created to hide the evidence of highly advanced civilizations that existed before massive floods destroyed all the civilizations existing at low elevations 12,000 years ago. Those were the people at low elevation. That's why when they talk about in the Bible that Noah's sons married these girls who were outside, the boat when they landed, they were at higher elevations. This was probably done to prevent people from challenging the status quo, knowing greater things were possible. God wipes out these advanced civilizations when they go too far in the wrong direction. Each civilization has its own creation story, and many of them has a destructive flood story. All of these advanced civilizations were not destroyed by water. So, everything that we've been talking about here.
Hey, which one's Graham Hancock, the fat one or the skinny one?
Graham Hancock is the skinny guy.
Who's the fat one? Because we know about there's a flood that happened 11,000 or 12,000 years ago, but he said there was another one that happened 6,000, 7,000 years ago. So it's clearly this reset happens 6,000, 7,000 years. There's different, and it doesn't happen at the whole world at one time, but it happens enough where, like, oh shit, these motherfuckers had to build a pyramid to hide in and shit like that, or Noah's Ark. So then Methuselah and all. There's all these different stories because these events happen over and over, or they're the same event. Doesn't make that's how they convince you it's the same event. But if it's happening multiple times, each time that society left little things for us to find, so we wouldn't start over, have to start from zero. And guess what? We're starting from zero every time because somebody brainwashed us and told us that the Catholic Church was the best thing going, and that these Romans were. Like, they don't talk about Hannibal beating up the Romans all the time. Nope. It talks about, hey, the Romans took over and they created a bank and they created a church and still to this day, and the Vatican, blah blah blah, and they got their archives. Well, how come they just don't let us see the archives? Nope, because if we let you see the archives, then all of a
Then
sudden
you know that those are where the lies are exposed, because
you don't need
then
us
you
no
see
more.
what really happened.
Yeah, you don't need us no more if you have your own education. It's the same Hegelian bullshit where they do the.
Listen, when the Jesuits showed up in Japan, they were not allowed to enter because they saw them as a threat, because they saw that they were deceiving people and they were all about doing sneaky ass shit. And so they were like, no, kill these motherfuckers, put them up on crosses, get them the fuck up out of here. And then what happens is Martin Scorsese makes this movie that's pro-Jesuit that wants to make you feel bad about, what the Japanese did to these motherfuckers. The movie's called Silence. And it has the actor, Adam Driver, who played Darth, who was the new dark side Jedi in the new Star Wars movies.
The young nigga. I know you're talking about.
Yeah. Anyway, Adam Driver. So he plays a young Jesuit, and then the guy who plays Spider-Man in the second Spider-Man movies, Andrew Garfield, also plays a Jesuit. And this whole movie is propaganda that's supposed to make you feel sorry for these Jesuits that came to Japan trying to control their upper class and the military and the ruling empire.
It didn't work. It didn't work.
It did not work.
But hold it. But what about what they did to China, where they got all them niggas hooked on opium and took their silver? They got. So the reason we have tea time is because the tea came from China. But what they did was they got all these people over there hooked on opium at these opium houses.
Not only that,
their silver.
The concept of communism was brought to them by Jesuits.
Yeah. So So we show a place where
now, what people don't understand is that $2 billion in tithes are paid every year to the Catholic Church by the Chinese Communist Party. Did you know that?
Oh, I thought they was against religion. Communism don't like religion.
Right, but they recognize the contributions that the Jesuits have given them.
Oh, that was interesting.
See?
and that's one to grow on.
See? That lets you know the piccolo player is truly a motherfucker. And that there is some inside baseball going on to all of this horse shit.
They're lying to you about time. They're finding pyramids all over the place. China
it's professional wrestling, dude.
Oh, yeah. Oh yeah. And you sit there and cheer for a motherfucker for one day, and then the next day you jeer a motherfucker.
He's the heel.
Yeah. And so, but right now, they pick and choose who we don't like. Well, look, we keep finding out they got UFOs in Russia and China. We keep finding pyramids in China and find pyramids over in a place in Europe. Please forgive me. There's a huge one. So if we find these, it's cool to know about the pyramids in Egypt. And we see those, but if you find out that they got pyramids other places, there's mountains that look like pyramids because there probably are pyramids. So that means that this timeline is different. That these people, we are the gods of this world, and we're supposed to act a certain way, and we shouldn't be beholden to nobody over no goddamn money or property. You know what I'm saying? We should all be healthy, living forever, living a lot longer than 72 years. You know what I'm saying? We all got these fucking mineral deficiencies, and they sit here and treat it like it's a disease. Most of these, Sebi told you, most of these diseases can be treated when you take sea moss and this other shit. Or moringa, that's another one that has a bunch of, or sea salt. That's because they want you coming back. They want you using a drug to make you operate better, not feel better. But I can go to work. Yeah, they're fucking with you. They're hiding shit in plain sight.
As I said before, this is all cookie crumbs and a slow IV drip reward system. And that's why this whole transcendentalism or this transcendence, where they're going to do this body modification to put a computer in your head or in your body and make that wearable Fitbit that you have on the outside of your arm inside your arm. And all this nonsense to take your personal power away from you and give it to them. I said this before many times. They want to get to know you from the inside out, not the outside in.
Look, man, Look, stop falling for the bullshit, y'all. Come on. And I think sometimes that when we see stuff, we're impressed with it, but then we got to go to the computer to find out. Google, what is this? Stop looking for, what's the word I'm looking for? Justification. If something is beautiful, it's beautiful. Something, there's books out there. Go get the motherfucking books before you go visit. If you're going to go to a national park or whatever, go get a goddamn book from the 1930s about that motherfucker.
So here's the thing. I have just presented all this stuff for you here from a nuts and bolts, fact-based presentation. Okay, this is all information about things that were built. I didn't talk about really what is the motivation behind this. Now we're going to save that for another show, but it's something that people refer to as the little season. And when you hear this shit, it's going to really fuck with your spiritual standpoint regarding religious foundations and ideas about what is to come or what has already happened. So look, I'm going to leave it right there for now. We're going to revisit that later. That's all I got. We out. Peace.
Holla back.